I was working on my first album, and I had the honor and the privilege of working with one of the greatest and most respected piano players in the industry, by the name of the late Richard T. And when he played on this next song, he really brought it to life. And so I'd like to dedicate it to him tonight. It's called Vanishing.
People who recorded in the 90s prior to the digital thing had to be amazing because every second of recording time was extremely expensive back then. Oh, she sounds good even in this quality. That's really cool. So the crescendo diminuendo there is from the thyroid cartilage tilt. The most prominent part of your Adam's apple can tilt, and it stretches out the folds and warms up the sound. So she starts it. She starts it untilted. And as the vibrato intensifies, that's when she's tilting. I'm actually, I've only listened to 90s Mariah only a few times. I'm shocked at how luscious this is with this level of quality of recording.
Wasn't it you and me surviving?
So usually I give Whitney a lot of credit for this, where Whitney does a lot to emphasize the words. But Mariah here is doing a lot of really cool things to emphasize the words.
Wasn't it you and me surviving?
So it was like, so the statement, if it's you and me.
Wasn't it you and me?
It's always weird to punch pronouns. This is more of an acting philosophy, but in singing, it's weird. So what you generally want to bring attention to is the verb, the action.
Wasn't it you and me surviving the fading out of my sight with your vanishing?
Oh my God, I hope those are real backup singers, because that's magic. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. The reason why I love that versus like to make this sound when you have a bunch of people singing around each other, to make it this sonorous. That's gorgeous. The only way you can do that is through micro tuning. If I play this, that's not anywhere near as satisfying. That is a C major chord. I could play any chord on this keyboard and it wouldn't be as satisfying as that, because every half step on a keyboard is tuned to be the same. So every half step is the same and equal temperament tuning. But instruments and singers, certain instruments like string instruments, unfretted string instruments, can do micro tuning to get this level of like lovely sonorous sound stuff. I'm going to pretend like I actually knew the words for that. It always shocks me how much she can do with how little air. That little, man. That's false holds. Man, I can't even do it right now because I've been hunched over like a troglodyte. The like Becky California sound, that sort of grind thing. That it's a vocal fry. It's where the folds are very, very lax and they kind of hit together a little bit. And so when teaching some people who have a lot of tension problems, and this is not just my trick, a lot of voice teachers use this, you get them into the fry and then you have them jump up. But the reason I'm surprised here is not because she does that and then goes to a note. What I find surprising is how luscious the sound is after the fry. Because the fry takes so little air and lower notes take more. Like she is able to instantaneously put enough air behind that low note to where it sounds more lush. The more air you put, so this is how the vocal folds work. Bernoulli effect. Not perfect, but as I blow air, they come together, right? So the more air you blow, the more they come together. Yes. That's the sound. Usually I'm more busy talking about the actual technique, but the tone of her voice is gorgeous, and these backup singers are incredible. Backup singers are some of the best singers you'll ever find, by the way. So she does that vocal growl thing again, the vocal fry. And then I think she does a cricoid tilt here. No, it's all thyroid. So she goes up from that into thyroid tilt, which is the tilting of the larger part of your larynx, Adam's level, whatever. And that stretches the folds and deepens the tone. The reason why I find that impressive is because it happens pretty quick. So when your folds are slack and doing that like Becky California thing, you don't have the thyroid tilt there. Because the thyroid tilt, I wish I had a rubber band. If you take a rubber band and you stretch it out like that, right? The ends come close together. Vocal folds work the same way. So if you tilt the thyroid cartilage where the vocal folds have a connection, literally an insertion, they're attached to the thyroid cartilage. So you tilt it and that stretches them out. So if you want your folds to be relaxed and flopping, you don't use a thyroid tilt. So it's the fact that she goes from one to the other so quickly, I find that impressive. Right? Like it's so smooth. You don't hear an abrupt change in tone. It's a gradual thing. But it's done so smoothly and so quickly, it's deceptive. It's not easy to do that. And then her use of glottals here is really cool. So this is another example of her giving the words some life using different techniques. When she goes for eyes, the word eyes, she is using what's called a glottal stop. So it means the vocal folds are together. You can do this right now. If you hold your breath, and then you can either cough or just sing, like hold your breath and then pretend to hold it as you sing. So that's glottal. So it's like you have them together, boom, and then you kind of stuff it open, right? And it's a great way to bring attention to a word because the way that it suddenly starts the note, right? So it's a little bit more of a percussive way to open up with a vowel. One of the things I really like about pop, and basically anything that isn't classical singing, you have permission to hit notes in such a way where it would not be comfortable to sustain those notes. But you get a cool sound as a result of that. So even though, like here, I'll point it out. So that, if she sustained any of that, it wouldn't work because there's a lot of strain and tension there. But that's deliberate. She's putting strain and tension for the effect. It's not a good idea to think of the voice as right and wrong. It's more about cause and effect. So this deliberate strain here is done with very little air, so it doesn't have a lot of consequences in terms of her ability to sing for a long period of time, but it does give a certain sound. And so she's very gently doing that and not staying on it for that long. And then that's beautiful, beautiful sustaining there. I love these tie-offs. She does this so well. These little runs that fade. And you could kind of see it, right? The mic is right here. And then she goes for the O on the last, little note there, and then tilts her head away. To do dynamics like this, you have to be pretty dramatic because in terms of like suddenly changing the volume, singers have a lot of compression in their signal chain. Usually the signal chain is from the mic to the recording. There can be all sorts of things there. One of the common things to have is a compressor, which lessens the dynamic range. The lowers sound louder, the highers don't sound as loud, right? Hence compression, right? So it compresses the dynamic range that is available. So when you want to do a tie-off like this, then she brings her head to the side. If you have a lot of compression, like I said, you need to be dramatic. If you just get quiet, that wouldn't work in this situation. So just, and then she tilts her head to the side. And I think it's really cool. She's really good at stuff like that. Gorgeous. This run into that. So when you do runs and you want to do them that quickly, it behooves you to have very, very thin folds. So very gentle breath and very thin folds. The thinner they are, the easier it is to move them around, right? So that's why you generally lighten your breath so that the folds don't come together as much. And what's lovely is that she's using the U, like the diphthong U, the Y there in your vanishing. So she'll do the run. And then she's going to use your as the diphthong, 2 different vowels is what a diphthong is. And she's going to use the fact that that vowel change has a change in color. E is a brighter vowel than oo. I hope that makes sense without me having to pull up a spectrogram to show you the frequencies. E has more high frequencies, okay? So what she does there is she doesn't tilt her larynx, the thyroid cartilage, until she's on the end of the diphthong. So it goes your. She adds that thyroid tilt at the end of it. And it gives this lovely like crescendo diminuendo to the phrase. Like it's so subtle, but the phrase is so much better for it. My goodness. So this takes a little bit more vocal, like what this is, what you're hearing here is like a decent amount of breath pressure on the lower notes, which is fine. Lower notes take more air anyway. Think of a subwoofer and how it actually moves air. Obviously, it's not that dramatic in a singer, but that's the idea. So lower notes take more air. And then she adjusts very quickly. To not disconnect the phrase, she is tilting her thyroid cartilage, which again warms up the sound, but she's adding the tiniest bit of tension so that she eliminates vibrato. And then she brings it in and out with spectacular control. The thyroid cartilage is not an on or off switch. It's a dimmer, right? Has a total continuum, right? You can have it in this range of motion. And she's using the range of motion of the thyroid tilt to get more nuanced phrasing. And also she's using this in combination with the vowels. Okay, for the sake of showing this, I'm going to show this on the spectrogram right here. So the first vowel there is an ah vowel, and then the second vowel there is an oo vowel. You can see how the lower notes with the lips protruding makes it so that the lower frequencies are louder, and you can tell by like the more teal it is, the brighter it is, that's volume. That's what represents volume on this graph. The frequencies that are higher that are playing in the left side, you can just see the waveforms. Those are different frequencies versus the right, which is going to be louder on the low end, but lacks the brighter vowels. Now, how is she using that? Let's talk about that. The way that she goes off of the tilt there for the thyroid cartilage, which again adds lushness, she's also using a darker vowel with O. And then she switches to A at the end of that. And the result is a pretty dramatic change in tone. And then she changes from the brighter vowel to the darker vowel, particularly as she descends. Is she's shaping the phrase. She does that all on one vowel. It's not anywhere near as interesting. By manipulating vowels, or by using vowels, not manipulating them, by using vowels, she can, even with compression, and even with amplification, she can really control the perception of how loud something is. And it allows her to have incredibly dynamic phrasing, even under the circumstances of having a microphone and compression like this. It, goes from louder to softer. She shapes the phrase that way. It's super clever. It's pretty high. It's a pretty high belt. Yeah. That's very difficult. It is hard to appreciate from recordings how loud a belt is. If we were to go with the spectrogram again, what we'd see is that there's this section of frequencies that are like super, 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 super loud. So you can kind of get the impression here, but it doesn't really translate that well. And then to sustain it like this takes a tremendous amount of breath control. On top of that, so what she's doing is tilting her cricoid cartilage in order to belt. At the base of your larynx, below the thyroid cartilage, there's a cricoid cartilage. If that tilts, it will fatten up the vocal folds, and that will allow you to get very loud sounds even as you ascend. Usually when you ascend, you want more thin folds, but with a belt, you have these really thick folds. You have to be very careful and very gentle with the air. So this is very high, so it means her breath is very, very gentle. She's changing the size of her tilt. So the cricoid tilt, again, just like the thyroid, it's not an on or off switch. To move around like this, she has to tilt and untilt very quickly in order to start doing her runs. Because remember when we said thinner folds are better for runs? So she's in the middle of a belt, fat folds. And then she has to tilt and untilt very quickly to be able to move like this. This vibrato here is her tilting the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage at the same time. It's pretty cool. And then she untilts the cricoid to tie off the phrase. I mean, it's bonkers. And there's something I want to point out. And I was talking with Chad in the live stream about this earlier. It's not that she does these things. I mean, yeah, it is cool that she does these things. What's boggling my mind, what's cray-cray, is the precision. It's how clean all of it is, right? We were joking around before I started analyzing this video that there are a lot of people in the singing subreddit who will go, "Ah, I hit the note. I did it. I did a good job. I did the thing." High range notes. Every note that she sings from bottom to top, which is why I like talking about her lows, because her lows are actually really good. It's not enough to hit notes. It has to sound good. I know. Shocker. But this is more than just sounding good. This is incredibly clean execution. Listen to how consistent this belt is. The only thing that breaks its consistency is when she moves notes and adjusts her larynx to be able to do that. That in and of itself is very impressive, but that it sounds good is even more bonkers because it's a very difficult thing to do by itself, but it sounds good. So she's not only doing a great job with it, She's extremely efficient with it, and she's using it to make artistic decisions. There's levels to this stuff. So I don't care how high your is, okay? Please practice, singing, not being a turkey. It's insane. The way that she ties in the lower notes into her phrasing. So again, we were talking about bright versus dark here. And at this time, right? I was exaggerating a little bit. But you hear how when she goes to the ends of these phrases, she's very much using darker vowels, but that's not all. But wait, there's more. So she's not doing return, right? The soft palate is drooped here. So what does that sound like, right? So if I go, very, very lifted soft palate, very bright vowel. But if I dome the soft palate, I do that, right? Very different, much more warmth to that. So she goes from super bright at the beginning of this phrase. And then on that vowel, she starts to droop. And then instead of distance, distance. You hear this vowel? And she's doing the vowel thing with the relaxed lips. So it's twofold. And it gives her a more lush tone. This is something Whitney Houston does a lot. And a lot of modern singers actually started to do it. This is particularly someone that comes to mind. But she's using this in a very subtle way to get warmth as she descends. Spirit is another instance of the domed soft palate. Instead of spirit. The result of all of this, so the lowering of the soft palate has the same effects of the vowels we were talking about earlier. It has the same effects, right? So higher the soft palate, the more higher frequencies. Lower the soft palate, the less high frequencies, and the louder and the more highlighted the lower frequencies are, right? And so she's using that to make these phrases more gentle and more lush. And the reason why doming her soft palate, making it lush, is so cool here is not only that she's doing that, but she's doing it in contrast to the phrase that comes after it. Listen to how bright the phrase following this is. The larynx is higher. The soft palate is raised more often. It's not always raised here. But that soft, lilting note, higher larynx, no tilts, very, very, very little air. And how beautiful is the arc of that phrase, right? I have some students who want to sing big and powerful, and I get it. You know, they got a lot inside they want to get out, and I get it. But you have to be able to do this light stuff too. The other thing that's cool, and I just heard this, is that in order to get up to this very light sound compared to the notes before it, You can hear it. It's hard to hear, but she does, that's an aspirate, the H sound. When you are singing in the middle of a phrase and your folds are very thick, it is very difficult to change all of a sudden to very light folds. Because you're in the middle of an exhale and you have to like change a bunch of stuff in your torso to make things lighter. And even then, like if your inhale is big, you're not going to be able to suspend your torso enough. So what she does is she does an aspirate, which blows the folds open, which allows her a second opportunity to adduct her folds in a more thin way. So she's fat, she's fat, she's fat. Blow open with the aspirate, she's thin. And I'm sure if we put that higher note, that really softer note through a spectrogram, what you would see is basically just a bunch of high frequencies and no like volume in the bottom. This is what's so cool about the human body as an instrument, is like this way that we can adjust our tone. We have so many options. It's nuts. Like beatboxers use their voices in crazy different ways. They do sub-bass frequencies with their lips. It's crazy what people can do. But it's not enough to have a bunch of tricks. It's not good enough. You have to put them and apply them in these ways. And this is what I love about Mariah Carey, is that she uses technique for the purpose of making music. And that's such a powerful thing to take away from listening to her. Because yes, she will have probably better range than almost anybody in existence. But she sounds great doing it. And it's not just a bunch of high notes that makes her great or tells you that she has great technique. It's all of these little nuanced things that she's doing to bring out the music and put the music first. I get inspired when I listen to Mariah for this very reason. I would not, when preparing a song, practice this. Like, I wouldn't have thought to make such a dramatic shift. But she does choices like that so often in so many different songs. She has such a great musical intuition. And it's like the technique is just not an issue, and that's what makes it great. This is more of this crazy high belting into the so it's a tilting of the thyroid and the cricoid. The second the vibrato hits in, she's doing vocal gymnastics here. Cricoid belt, thyroid, vibrato, lusciousness, right? Again. I think a lot of folks are going to hear that and go like, wow, that's a high note. Yes, and it is impressive. But she's not just hitting a high note with one thing. Like, before when we were talking about when you're not going to hit a note and sustain it because you want this little strained thing. She's doing that. She's switching off that quickly with a belt, cricoid tilt straight, and then vibrato. And then she's like untilting her cricoid cartilage to do runs. Give the woman a gold medal for vocal gymnastics. That needs to be a category because she just pinned the landing. Stuck the landing. These aren't just high notes. So even like let's say someone is in the singing subreddit and they actually have a nice high note and it's sustained. Cool. Now what can you do with that? This is one answer. Now this is cool. So I don't know when it started happening where when people started doing runs and they like move their jaw in time, it's this really cool effect. And Ariana Grande actually gets way too much cred for it. When she does that little jaw motion, it actually adds a little bit more of an attack to the note. It's a way to rhythmically separate the runs and just not make it a bunch of fast notes, but actually making music. And what she's doing instead to give rhythmic emphasis is she's using glottals. So it's when your folds are closed, and then you start putting air behind them. So hold your breath, make a sound while trying to hold your breath still. That's how you accomplish a glottal. And she's starting and stopping. And this is, again, more technique for the sake of musical expression. The way that she is using her melismas, her runs, is intelligent. And in the absence of like the whole modern day jaw thing, she's using starting and stopping. She's using glottal stops. She's changing her vowels. There's a lot of things you can do to bring out a run and not just make it a pointless scale. You even see this. You even see her going away from the microphone. The way she jumps and leaps, that leap is crazy. And here's why it's crazy. When you have a lower note that you're singing on, let's say that note, and you want to go up right here, so it's an octave up, which is smaller of an interval than what she just did. So if you're down here and you put too much vocal weight, if you put too much breath behind it and the folds are fat, it is not going to be easy or even possible to jump. So what does she do? She makes the lower note less loud by not having as fat of folds, but she does it very quickly. Listen to how soft the note is beforehand. So I don't know what the word is, the syllable, but I hear an S. The reason that's significant is you can dump a lot of air on an S. So she's been doing these really lush lower phrases. So what she doesn't have, if she doesn't take a bigger inhale, she doesn't have this luscious note. So this inhale, in order to hit the lower notes lusciously, it's a bigger inhale. So what she's doing is when she gets to the S, she's dumping air. So you can take a big gulp, right? Like you dump a bunch of air on this. and that allows her to go up. It's so smart. And I don't think Mariah Carey or any singer of this caliber consciously, deliberately makes these choices. Maybe they do. Maybe they dump air and they know to do that. But at this level, it's intuition. At this level, you're not deliberate. You're not like planning, unless you're rehearsing. I mean, but she's not. She's in a performance. She's just executing these things that are really, really complicated and difficult, and she has them on lock. You have to build coordination for this stuff. This is not like a conscious thought, like, oh, I thought about tilting my larynx and it just did its job. Hey, you have to learn how to actually do that stuff. There's an athleticism to this. Because it's not just that one. It's not just a matter of dumping air. She dumps the right amount and then starts the note. Okay, because like you can dump air, but it might not be enough air to hit the high note. Right? There's levels. And she's on level 99 if there was a level cap. And the vanishing thing she does here, this little grind here. I used to think that it was the actual folds flopping like that. It's not. It's actually the false folds coming together. The false folds coming together is responsible for these growls up top. It is very easy to drain your vocals on growls like this, where the false folds come together. Because when you put the false folds together, it is unbelievably inefficient to do that. You're putting a lot of strain on your voice if you approach that with too much air. The way that she is able to use her false folds to growl is really interesting because it gets way more quiet. Why? Less air. Check this out. You see that volume difference? When you growl, you want to do that. You want to pull back on the air and be gentle. Her classical chops are amazing too. I think her mother was an opera singer or was a singer of some sort. That is basically straight classical singing. She has brighter vowels than maybe would be idiomatic of opera. Opera like strives to have dark sounds in it. And then that run is just like... Honestly, that as cool as that is, that's not the most impressive part for me of this section. It's all the things she can do when she's up top here. It's difficult to overstate that the amount of wiggle room you have for breath pressure in your top like this is not a lot. You do not have a lot of wiggle room here. It is most people feel satisfied and successful if they even fall anywhere in between this where they can hit a high note cleanly. And they're in this little range of options of how little air you can have, right? They hit somewhere in here and they're good. They hit the high note. They can sustain it. They're proud of it. Mariah understands how to maneuver with this amount of difference that she's allowed to have with breath pressure. this is, again, belt, cricoid tilt, thinning. Like, every time she goes, like, when she goes, you know, for this little tiny run, she's thinning the folds. I'm just trying to learn to belt. Like, I'm an opera singer. That's where I came from. So I'm just trying to learn to belt so I can teach people how to do it. And, like, I'm just proud when I hit a high note with a belt. I'm like, that was clean. I sustained it. I feel awesome. I did it. Sounds powerful. And then she's like, aren't you cute? Check this shit out. And then she does this belt into these little turn, like, which she has to, boom, tilt the cricoid cartilage to get the powerful belt, untilt it, thin the folds, then do it again and again and again. And that run on the descent might sound impressive, but she's already using very little air. So the run is actually quite easy to pull off after that. It's not easy to pull off, but it's far easier and takes far less air to do this kind of chicanery. I mean, that's just chicanery and boulder dash. Her, like, belting is hard enough, but when you can tilt your cricoid cartilage, which is at the base of your you know, bony throat parts, and you can tilt the thyroid cartilage, which is the protrusion, right? The thing that goes this, you know, the big stuff, the big part. When you can do both at the same time, you get the best of both worlds. So like I said with the belt, you generally just you don't have a lot of lower frequencies. You just have really, really hot frequencies, very loud frequencies in a certain range that's up and higher. When you can add a thyroid tilt to that, which makes the voice more lush, you get the best of both worlds. So she has a powerful note here. And then it sounds lush at the end. That's just nuts. Oh. This is one of those moments where I'm like, I'm never going to be that good. And